Hello, this is Russell here from Descended Masters channel. So today we're going to continue with our discussion on fifth dimensional manifestation and the fifth dimension in general. Now, last time in the video 1 of this series, I began to outline what is 5D and how creating from 5D might be different from 3D or 4D. Just to recap quickly, if 3D is the present world is like the physical material world. So when you're creating from 3D, you are doing stuff, you're doing your work, you're looking for things to do, to shift around and move things through space, if you like. It's your day job, basically. Then 4D, as I have it, is your mental and emotional level. It's also related to the astral level. So at this level, what we might do is work with law of attraction, and it's your visioning, imagination, harnessing of emotion. So people who are working at this level will be very much attuned to the law of attraction teachings and will be investing time in creating from thought. So we are visualizing first, feeling it, and then seeing what wants to happen, or following through an action from that thought, feeling. So at 4D it becomes quite important to manage your emotional state. That's where the positive thinking comes from. Abraham teachings, as I see most of them, would be coming from, or teaching about 4D, which is your imagination and emotion. Now there are certain drawbacks to this. Well, first, wonderful advantages, of course, was if everybody was doing this, the world would be a very beautiful place. We are all spending too much time trying to create this by moving stuff around in 3D. So imagine if we all looked at our emotional state and created from our 4D perception and get our emotional alignment first, get our hearts engaged, get our heart wisdom going, and act from there. A far more magical place. If the world is doing that, it would be a very beautiful place. So now, the problem with that, though, as I see it, is that the ego is still involved to some degree. It's what I call the enlightened ego. It's because you want to create something, there is arising out of lack. So the perception of lack arises, and then at the same time, there's what I would like to have in response to that lack. So then we go out and create it. So that's very beautiful because it drives all of the material creation that we see. It's wonderful. Yet at the core of that is actions we're taking to medicate a lack. Abraham speaks of whenever there's contrast, at the same time as the lack, there's a rocket of desire is born for what you do want. So the advice is to follow what you do want. It's wonderful advice. And we still can work with this even if we're working at 5D. But at the core of that, the rocket of desire is arising from a place of lack. So we think we know what we need in order to fulfill that lack. If you feel that you don't have money, what you will do is you'll get your emotional state right, and then you will imagine having money. It's quite simple. So the rocket of desire says, oh, I'd actually love to be wealthy, and then your negative side is saying, oh, I'm so poor, it's never going to come right. So this law of attraction teachings and its wisdom says, don't focus on that what you don't want, focus on what you do want, and create from there, which is wonderful advice. So when I was working this for quite a while, there was always something holding me back with it. And it was the question is, am I not still creating with ego? How do I know that this rocket of desire, as it were, is really going to get me what I want, what I really, really need? So that always held me back until I discovered more about 5D manifestation, which is a different process. We'll get into more of it now. Just to outline the limitations of 4D. Because at the moment it's mostly what people recognize as like this height of spiritual awareness, if you like, or creation is 4D. But for those of you who've been trying and working with it for longer and who've been bothered by the ego issue, is the ego there? Am I trying to... the question arises, should I be loving what is, or should I be trying to change what is? Should I love what is or change what is? Eckhart Tolle is very much on the should I love what is. And then law of attraction is change what is. How do we bring those two together? If you're only doing it 4D, there's a lot of changing involved. So that was where the question arises. What would happen if I just accept and love where I am? Do I still need that thing that I want to create? So that is the doorway to the fifth dimensional manifestation. The doorway to fifth is loving what is. So it's a whole different operating system. So let me just jump into 5D now. 5D, the fifth dimension, is your dimension of being, and that is always present. It's ever present. It is always here. So the 3D and the 4D, the 3D you're taking physical action of some time to feel good. 4D you're imagining feeling good. So there's a time period of which you work to feel better, and it's connected to your biophysiology. The feeling good is kind of a biophysiological and mental and emotional state. Now states come and go. What I'm talking about here, and I'm equating 5D with a state of being, it's actually not a state, let me correct that. Your being is your nature. Your nature is always in existence, is always here now. And that is free. It at its core is without qualities. Yet when that part without qualities begins to emerge into the world, it will begin to, you'll sense the subtle qualities of joy, bliss, curiosity, strength, ruthless truth, and several others of that nature. The important thing to know is that this is always present. There's nothing you have to do to access it. And here's the great insight also, is that in 3 and 4 dimensions, you're wanting to move away from something, to eliminate a negative state so that you can have a better state. So there's a linear progression. So if you're working, just say you're feeling low, so you can work with your heart focus and your heart breathing, and you can imagine a good feeling, and it's pretty soon you'll be feeling good. Now that good has come about because you have eliminated some negative emotion in you, or state. You've changed the state. It's a state change. If you only do that, you'll miss out from the fact that who you are is not a state, and that who you are, the bliss of who you are, can coexist very well with the so-called negative emotional states. Sometimes that negative emotion really wants to be felt. So this is where the limitations of the 4D manifestation processes come in, because it requires you to eliminate the unwanted emotions. So part of you is they're not allowed. So there's a subtle conflict comes in, and that subtle conflict is actually quite powerful, because if it's illumination, if it's transcendence you're looking for, you will not get it by eliminating a part of you. At the end of 4D, at the end of that empowerment, spiritual empowerment phase, you finally got to sit down with all the shit, actually, all the unprocessed stuff that you've actually run away from by trying to change the emotional state. I'm not knocking the 4D process. Changing emotional state is brilliant. It's beautiful work. If we all did it, the world would be a wonderful place. Yet you're still not accessing the you, the self, that is beyond any state. And you're thinking that you are the one who has these emotions. You're the one who has these thoughts. You're thinking that you're a you. And that is the core. That will hold you back from the next step. That is where there's still room for ego. I call it the enlightened ego. The enlightened ego. It's quite a pleasant ego, but it's an I, and where the I is, where the ego I is room for suffering. Because still will come into your awareness the deep wounds, the pain from the deep wounds from either this life or others, doesn't really matter. and not even your own, could be from the world. You'll start feeling that. Then if you try to repress that by feeling good, you just prolong the pain. There will come a point, this is what we call the dark night of the soul, where you've done all the work you can with shifting emotional state, and you've achieved some level of bliss, but it's relative bliss, and you think you've kind of finally got it, and then God says, that's not it. Time for the next thing, time for you to feel all that you weren't allowed to feel, because you are everything now. Third and fourth dimension, you are trying to be light. You're chasing the light. You're forgetting about the dark, the darker aspects of your nature. Now, if God really and oneness is really everything, so then you're not about repressing that. It's about owning it. So now you've got to do the work of owning that, owning the shadow, owning the pain, owning and feeling through that trauma, and finding that even though the pain is there, the bliss of your being is coexistent with it. You do not have to eliminate. So here's the great thing. Just get this. You don't have to eliminate your negative feelings in order to experience the bliss of 5D, because 5D is already here now. 5D does not require you to not be you. 5D requires you to feel compassionately the you of your human existence. I often refer to the image of the crucifixion, not because I'm Christian or Catholic or anything, but because that seems to me like a central metaphor of a Western tradition, and also of a spiritual truth, which is that Jesus did not get off the cross. He remained there, and that was his most divine moment in the flesh while suffering. You don't even have to believe that Jesus was a real person. Just take the metaphor of that. It's a powerful teaching story. The lesson there is, don't try to get off the cross. That's 3D and 4D shit. You're on it. Wounded. Tormented. Spat on. And yet you can bring from yourself spirit. That is why the teaching is that there, the forgiveness in that moment. If you can bring forth forgiveness, in fact forgiveness of yourself for being human, then you've achieved that supreme mastery. It's not about mastering the circumstances. So here again, some clues about what 5D is. Not at all about mastering circumstances, because your true nature is like the sun that shines on the earth, has no vested interest at all in what goes on earth. Clouds, sunny day, it doesn't matter, the sun still shines. That is your true nature. And what it wants to do is simply experience being human, because in the human condition is the perfect condition for exercising unconditional love. Now, the way to do that is by meeting all your aspects of you. You can't experience unconditional love if you're only like angelic and only have the good parts. It's not unconditional, that's conditional. So 3D and 4D is conditional levels. The conditioned bliss of, if you imagine a good state, it's conditional on imagination, it's conditional on your body chemistry. If you can't get your chemistry right, you're not going to experience that happiness, that joy. So that puts a limitation on it, and that layers people with guilt. So if you've been feeling guilt because you can't feel happy, hang in there, it's okay. You don't have to feel happy at that level. You do what you can, you do your best to get your physiological state right. But the doorway to 5D and being is in the midst of the pain. It's on the cross. In fact, the cross experience is a beautiful reminder that you're basically, can I swear, you're basically fucked in your physical existence. And that moment is the surrender. So that's the moment where loving what is takes over from changing what is. Because if you're on the cross and you're nailed in, you can't go anywhere, right? Now you have to bring forth your deep essence. And you can find that there's deep joy and bliss in that. And bliss is not singing hallelujah and jumping around. It can be quiet peace or quiet acceptance, or just quiet presence. It's engagement. Okay, how do we feel this 5D, fifth dimensional essence? How do we live 5D? So if the previous third and fourth was about shifting stuff, 5D is the opposite. It's about not doing a thing. You absolutely stop all efforts to make things better. It's like the one rule. And then you stay aware. Eckhart Tolle uses the expression, that image of the cat waiting for the mouse to come out of the mouse hole. Just aware, waiting. Not waiting. You're just aware, present. So what you do, say you're feeling not so great. Something's been troubling you, and you decide you'd like to work on this at the sort of 5D level. What you then do is you just sit and be present. First thing is stop. Stop all your efforts to make it feel better. And then just sit and feel. Give yourself permission to feel exactly what you're feeling. So a question you can ask at that point is simply, what's happening now? That's a magical question that brings you into the present moment. What's happening now? So 5D is now, it's the present moment. What's happening now? So in what's happening now, I'm noticing I'm talking to a camera. I can see outside the window, the wind is blowing, there's sounds. If I turn my attention inward, there are certain sensations inwardly. If I was feeling happy, I'd feel happiness. If I was feeling sad, perhaps feel sadness. And then you can really just easily breathe into that sadness, not to get rid of it, but to feel it more, to feel it fully and completely, to be in your body. So you're just stopping, feeling, give 100% permission to feel. Then you can ask yourself, is it okay can I put it this way, can I say yes to this experience just for now? Which means, am I okay just to experience it? Because we're so much taught not to experience the negative. And yet if you're overwhelmed with negative, if your body is feeling, your body is like an animal, it will feel pain, even emotional and physical pain. So if you sat with that and give yourself permission, so I'm going to feel pain right now, and something might say, no, you can't, because it's creating negatively, and I'm supposed to think positive. Then you just observe that. Is it okay? Can I say yes to this feeling of resistance, to feeling the resistance of my pain? So you'll notice that there's several levels of resistance there, and you just finding the yes behind all of that, which is the simply agreeing to, I will experience this for now, and I'll just notice what's happening. I notice my original pain. I notice the resistance to feeling that pain, and yet I'm still sitting here. That means that I'm allowing. So now you've stepped into the place of allowing, and that, dear friends, is 5D. That's all it is. You'll notice in there, when you start to pay attention to it, that the simple act of giving yourself permission to not do anything, to not run away from yourself, brings a relief. So your next question can be just observe more. What happens when I say yes to this experience? First you might just notice this pain, but if you say yes and yes to this pain experience, you'll begin to notice that coexisting with the pain is other subtle senses, which I call causeless joy or bliss, but it might come to you like peace or stillness. For me, usually what comes up is like a sense of stillness. What's happening there is that's the witness coming forth. That's the I am witness that is being revealed. And it's only revealed when you stop looking for it, when you stop trying to change things. So the I am that is witnessing this pain or discomfort or happiness starts to become apparent, and it'll feel at first like the background of awareness. Now you're participating in 5D, so you'd have no requirement to change emotional state. Yet by now putting awareness on what is in the background, and giving permission in the foreground for that discomfort to be here, you'll notice that you are not that pain and that you never had to do anything with it anyway, at least not for now, and that the bliss of your nature is coexistent with that. So there need not be any war of you against you trying to feel better when you can't, or having to always shift your mood. So if I can share how this has benefited me over the last few years when I've been practicing this, first I kind of noticed not what I thought was not much change. I was working with manifestation with this 5D work. But what I did notice is profound change. So after a year or two of this, I found that I was no longer depressed. I would go down, but not as deep. And I realized that that was because I was no longer fighting with myself. Because on a spiritual journey, if someone who takes their spiritual quest seriously, negative feelings become a problem. And feelings of failure sort of become a problem, because you're supposed to have this 6-figure income and you're supposed to have this fantastic relationships and all the stuff that they'll sell you on these law of attraction type courses. So if you're not getting that, it can be quite a harsh place to be. So I found that even though without knowing it, I was beating myself up on that. So this approach where I can be totally at home with feelings of failure, frustration, all those feelings, it brought a greater ease. So now I'm free to experience those, and I still experience those physical conditions that give rise to those things, but I'm just simply no longer going to that place anymore. Or if it is, it's quite short, and I can say, okay, here's that feeling again, let me just sit and feel it and say yes to it just for now. And then I give that space to breathe, and then it's no longer a problem, and then that I'm no longer a problem. So that is the end of suffering. And when you know that you are no longer the problem, and there's a bit of a split that happens between your awareness and the I, the ego I, that has these problems. Whereas before you took yourself as this I who was failing and had these terrible negative feelings that he couldn't control, now you are the one who's witnessing that. And it doesn't matter what is happening in this emotional fear. And you can work on it with your 3D and 4D levels, but never get stuck at those levels, because you'll always be working at improving your state, and you'll always be at war. If I was only working at that level, I would still be depressed, but I'd kind of have better tools for managing it. But the core thing would be there. The core issue was that I was not that I was at war with myself, and I was not allowing myself to experience the human feelings that we label negative. So the first tip, this is video 2, might be quite a few videos. This is more about outlining 5D, and it's still outlining 5D and its differences with 3 and 4. And we've touched on today how to access 5D. So if you can remember, 5D is just simply your presence. The first rule, the first step to access 5D, just know that it's always here regardless of what you feel. So the first step is stop everything you're doing to feel different. 5D experience has nothing at all, zero, zilch, nada, to do with what's happening in your circumstances of your life, including the circumstances of your chemistry and how you feel emotionally. Not that. It's different. Scratch all that off. This is something different. Different order of existence, which I'm talking about now. You'll only know it when you stop operating at 4D and trying to shift your emotional state. Just stop that shit now and feel it, and give yourself permission to feel. So first stop, feel, then notice what's happening within feeling. So first you'll notice pain, discomfort, or just whatever. You might be feeling good, but go deeper and just notice what's behind that. What else is there? And you'll start to fall into presence naturally. So what happens with me often is presence becomes, like time slows down a little bit. I start to notice things I hadn't noticed before, like just the presence of things in the room. Things seem to have a presence. and there seems to be the presence that is watching those things. So that now you're in presence. Now you're in the now. Now all what you feel doesn't matter because that's happening over here. It's not who you are. Now you're operating from who you are. Stop, notice, allow, fully feel, notice what's behind, and rest in that. And you can expand that without using effort. Just if you notice subtle peace or stillness, rest in that stillness. Sometimes what comes forth is energy. That might be what your like soul quality wants to come. So rest in the energy. Feel the energy. You might want to actually do something. And you can ask, what does that energy want to do? It might give you an answer to that, something you've been looking for. But you didn't really ask the question at that moment, but it brought it forth for you anyway. So we're going to leave that there for now. Stop, notice, feel. And expand into or rest into presence. If you can do that, that's 5D. Next session we'll talk about a little bit more about how to create from that place.